I truly cannot believe that it is that time of the year again. Time for another end of term recap. This is the time of year when I gather all of the resources that we have used throughout the term just past, and I take a moment to reflect on everything that we have accomplished. I have already done this twice this year, so if you're interested in these types of videos, I will pop links to those in the description box down below. But let's get straight in to our end of term 3 2021 recap. Let's start with our morning time. If you've been around here for any length of time, you all know that we start our day with documentaries. And I have to say, the number of you that have taken this on board and run with it, I'm kind of a little bit blown away by that, to be honest, because it was never ever something that I thought anyone else would jump onto. It's something that worked for us. We continue to watch documentaries every single morning that we're here at home. And I'm so glad to see that you are all enjoying that as well. I'm going to run through the documentaries that we did watch this term. I just open a note file in my phone and keep a record of them as we're watching them. Otherwise, come end of term, I've generally completely forgotten what we did way back at the beginning. Okay, so Human on Netflix. This was amazing. It is, yes, a human body documentary, but because it's so new, it's just done in such a different way. And whilst it is looking at all of our bodily functions and bodily components, they look at things in a completely different angle than what any other human body type documentary does. So I highly recommend that one. That's Human on Netflix. Then we had a moment or two where we wanted something a little bit lighthearted. So not necessarily falling into the documentary category, but we did watch season 1 of Magic for Humans. That one's actually a lot of fun, and there's a few seasons, 3 or 4, I can't remember exactly, but we quite enjoyed watching that as well. Then we moved on to Fantastic Fungi. Wow, the imagery in this one was stunning. It's definitely an adult documentary or an older children's documentary. They talk a lot about medicinal uses of fungi and those types of things, but it was really very fascinating. And considering one of my children has always been enamored by mushrooms, we really enjoyed Fantastic Fungi on Netflix. And moving along, as we began our ancient history program, we jumped on and watched Enigma Man, a Stone Age story. This one was actually on YouTube, and it's actually a really fascinating look at a very early man and where our current historians are looking at where some of our ancestry comes from. So that was a fascinating one as well. On the ABC, we jumped on and watched The Chemical World. This one is a little bit more of a traditional, older fashioned type documentary, still very valuable in the information that it provided us. It didn't have that wow factor that we often see in the newer documentaries, that we have on Netflix as an example. So we also watched on Netflix The Secrets of Saqqara Tomb. This was a long one, 2 hours, maybe just over 2 hours long, and it was all subtitles, so I was kind of thinking, oh, I'm not sure how the kids are going to go with this, but every time we switched it off, they're like, no, keep it going, keep it going. They were utterly enamored and fascinated with the Saqqara tomb. And a friend also lent us a quick guide to Egypt. This is a History Channel documentary, and in an hour and a half, it covered all the key components of ancient Egypt from beginning to end. So that was a really interesting one for us to sit and watch as well. And finally, we watched Todd Sampson's Mirror, Mirror. So this documentary is definitely not for young children in any way, shape or form, but it certainly covers our current societal issues with image and body dissatisfaction. It was extremely eye-opening, and I'm so glad that we watched it all together as a family. Right, so that was our documentaries, and I have to say, I say this every term, but gosh, I love gathering them up and looking at what we've actually watched just in that 20 minutes every single morning. It really quickly adds up how much learning has happened just from watching documentaries. And then after documentary time, we always move into our quiet independent reading. Again, as you know, we do our quiet reading time first thing of the day so that it always gets done. So these are the books that the 3 of us read during this term in our quiet reading time. I also have a couple of extra Audible books that I've done over the course of this term. And if you follow me on Instagram, you can see my short, sharp book reviews of them over there. A couple of our morning basket books that weren't necessarily related to any particular theme or topic that we were looking at this term is our What If. As you know, I'm sure I've mentioned this before in the past. This is a series of scientific answers to absurd and hypothetical questions. This is a fun book, and look, we don't read it very often. It was something that will probably take us years to get through, but that is part of our morning basket. We did read a couple of the entries in that this term. We also made a start on the Usborne Money book. I love these. Even though my kids aren't little, there is so much information packed in these, and every single page that we have currently read, we're stopping and have a conversation about something. So these are a really great investment. I'm so glad that I picked these ones up. So that's Usborne Money for beginners. For language arts this term, as you know if you watched my previous ones, we finished the full level of Grammar Galaxy at the end of last term. So we've left Grammar Galaxy and we're taking a break from that for the rest of this year. And for language arts, I pulled out our Logic of English so that we could do a really nice deep dive into some spelling practices, as we didn't do much of that in the beginning of the year. Only so much language arts we can fit in our couple of hours of school morning. So I decided to break it up this year and do more grammar focused work in the first half of the year and spelling focused work in the second half of the year. So that's Logic of English. We also kept going with read theory. That's a relative staple part of our school, and read theory gets done a couple of times a week. And we moved right along with some more Brave Writer books. So we also read and did the Brave Writer unit for Wings of Fire. I'm not going to go into too much detail with these because I've got a Brave Writer video coming up. Wings of Fire, the actual book, it is a lovely book, although my kids didn't overly enjoy it. Let's just put it that way. I think that may have had something to do with the narrator. Often when you're doing audio, the narrator really does make or break the book. But Wings of Fire, and then we also did Brave Writer, the Nerviest Girl in the World. This is a fun, cute book, and it packs a lot of history into this book as well. So that was the Nerviest Girl in the World. Okay, moving on to mathematics. You might remember last term I talked about getting these Maths Quest fun maths books where you have to follow a bit of a puzzle and do math activities to get to the end of the puzzle in each book. The point of me ordering these was to take the place of Life of Fred, which we were using as our review catch-up style maths. Look, I knew when I ordered these that they were going to be young, but so was Life of Fred. Life of Fred was several years below where we were actually in our mathematics programs. These for us were a fail. The concept of these I really, really like. I think the concept is fabulous, and we all said that these would make a great app. And I think if they were an app, I would definitely go back and have another look at them. But in book form, it just didn't seem to work for us. And the maths was probably at a grade 2, maybe a grade 3 level. And there just wasn't much in there. Sometimes we could read for a couple of pages before there was any type of math activity at all. So unfortunately for us, these were a fail for this term. If you saw my week in our life video, you'll know that my daughter started on this Cambridge University Press pre-vocational math program. So she finished the first unit in that. That's going well, and she will continue to work through that with her tutor. And my boy is still working through his Maths Quest grade 7. We only have one term left in this year to go, and he has done the bulk of the textbook, although he hasn't touched on the algebra component at all. So we're leaving the biggest bit till the end, I think. So this coming term will be interesting to see how he goes with that. But yes, we are still continuing with our math tutoring. That is basically how we're doing maths for the foreseeable future. Right, moving on to science. So this particular term, if you've followed me around a little bit, you will know that we expanded our little science co-op, and we have about 12 or so kids coming along on a Friday for a full day now. So we're still doing Lab of Mr. Q, physical science, going really well. We quite enjoy this program. It's relatively easy to use. As I've mentioned in the past, There are the odd times when we do struggle to get some materials. Some of the directions probably could be a little bit more explicit, and I think this program, if Scott ever decided to upgrade it, if he could include photos with some of the demonstrations, it would make this a fabulous, fabulous program. We still really love it. We've covered quite a lot of physical science topics this term. And some of those were, we looked at heat and temperature, conduction and convection, radiation, visible light and waves, and of course mirrors as well. And again, if you follow me on Instagram, I do try to share more of our science activities and photographs of what we're doing over there. Staying with science, we also completed the Arludo 8-week science program for this particular term, and that focused on the living world. So that's a completely different science program to something like this. Arludo is an app-based, interactive, online science program that doesn't include any pen and paper style activities. It was really, really fabulous and really very enjoyable, and the kids really, really liked that style of science. So I have done a full review of the Arludo program, and I will also link that for you down in the description box below. Also with science, as part of our morning basket, we completed my first book of quantum physics. This is such a good book. Man, physics is pretty heavy, isn't it? Especially when I don't have that background. But this gave us a really, really great taste at quantum physics and all of the components that are made up. And it went perfectly with our physical science study as well. So that's my first book of quantum physics. As part of our co-op days, we've also started with adding in geography, and we chose to have a go at visits to Europe. Now, I chose this because I have had this program. I bought it years ago with the good intention of using it, and it's just never ever occurred. So I said, for co-op, let's do visits to Europe. It utilises the book The Hungry Planet and also the book Material World. So we have done several of the lessons here in Visits to Europe. Visits to Europe is basically a purely mapping program, especially if you don't read the recommended go-along novels that work with this particular program, which is what we did for co-op. We used it simply for the mapping. And so I have to say, whilst the program itself is relatively easy and relatively straightforward, this is actually another fail for us, I'm afraid. Especially in a co-op setting, it didn't work well in that particular style of setting because each lesson is not uniformed. One lesson can take 15 minutes, the next lesson can take an hour and a half, so it was very difficult for us to manage that from week to week, especially if we have different parents running different sessions. The other thing is, I feel that it probably is something that needs to be looked at daily. It needs a lot of repetition, a lot of looking at maps. It's not just something we can come to co-op, do once, have no homework and come back the following week, because the kids will end up getting lost with the program. So that's not a fault of the program, it's just not something that is suited to a cooperative style environment. But that is another fail for us this term, I'm afraid. Woo. And then staying with co-op days, we are also doing history. So we're doing History Quest with our co-op. So this is History Quest early time, so ancient history. We do the reading at home ourselves, and then we come together on a Friday and have some group discussions about that particular era and do some hands-on history activities together as a group. And again, with history wherever possible, I've tried to share what I can over on my Instagram, so be sure you're over there following me. And of course, with history came a whole bunch of go-along morning basket books. Because this is a secular ancient history program, it starts way back in prehistory with very, very early man. Some of the books that we read that are great for this topic are Born with a Bang, From Lava to Life, and Mammals Who Morph. We have our family tree and evolution story, Amazing Evolution, The Journey of Life, The Story of Life, Evolution, Life Story, and there was an old man who painted the sky. So they're just some of our fun prehistory books that we read. Moving along to Suma. Suma's actually quite hard to find picture books about. Well, I found that, but I have the City of Rainbows, so it's a tale from Suma. And then if you saw my ancient Egypt unit study preparation, you already know how many ancient Egypt resources I have. So no, we did not get through all of those. So on top of reading the chapters on ancient Egypt in History Quest, doing the activities, watching the ancient Egypt documentaries, we also managed to read through some of these books. So we've got Sightseers Ancient Egypt, Mummy Mysteries, one of our notebooking page activities we did out of the Usborne Egyptian Things to Make and Do. We read the 5,000-year-old puzzle. This is probably still one of my favourite picture books for ancient Egypt. It's not one for real little kids, it's quite long. But whilst it covers the story, it also gives so much background information to what is going on at the time. We also used quite extensively Eyewitness Mummy, some lovely gruesome shots in there. Leap Through Time Pyramid. We read Peppy and the Secret Names, The Seeker of Knowledge. Had a little look through Secrets of the Sphinx, and Cleopatra. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention with history, because History Quest is actually an elementary program, and as you know, my kids are certainly not elementary aged, the copywork activities in here are definitely aimed at young children. So the way that I'm extending this, and at some point I'll probably do a full video about it, but the way that I'm extending History Quest is that every few chapters, the kids are writing a 5-paragraph essay. So both of them did that covering early man. So they also wrote their very own 5-paragraph essay using what we learned when we have sat through the IEW writing program. One of the best writing programs I've ever seen. Let's move on to art and craft. So obviously history contained a lot of this, and in fact so does science in a way, because it's a lot of hands-on making and doing things. We also took a painting lesson in a new to us art studio that's actually 10 minutes from home. Don't you love when you find those things? So we're so looking forward to continuing doing that. But both the kids did these adorable little turtle paintings this term. We also took a closer look at one of our states. Now this is a bit of geography and art, and the reason I'm saying it is also art is because I wanted to bring in the transfer grid technique with the kids. So we had a small map of the state of Tasmania and we did the grid transfer drawing across. Now this one is mine. My daughter, who is the drawer in the house, didn't want to use the grid technique, so she hand drew hers. And my son did use the grid technique, although in the end he wasn't happy because he realised that he missed a line somewhere in the middle. So as you can see with mine, his shape, but he still did a really great job considering it's the first time that we'd ever done anything like that. So that is our state of Tasmania, a little island state down off the bottom of Australia. Fingers crossed, all being well in the world, we hope to be visiting Tassie later on in the year. And we also briefly started a mini unit about Van Gogh. The Van Gogh Alive exhibition is coming to our capital city later in the year, and I've got tickets to go and see that. So of course, we need to study Van Gogh. So we've made a really brief start on that. And after the holidays, we will dive more deeply into our study of Van Gogh. We had 2 birthdays this term. It's a busy time of year for us. My daughter turned 17 and my son turned 13. So that's 2 relatively big events in the term. Of course, we continued going to GelSoft, although not as often this term. We just found we were busier doing other things, but we did have some fun at GelSoft a couple of times in the term. We started futsal, indoor soccer. And again, another activity that's only 10 minutes from home. So I was so happy to find this and then they took the facility from us to use for a vaccination hub. So there goes footsore for us for the rest of the year. Hopefully it will come back at the beginning of next year, but that was a really great find and we really enjoyed footsore. We also purchased theme park passes, so we've been doing a bit of theme park hopping every now and then throughout the term as well. Oh, we took a couple of family hikes. One was a really nice stroll on Father's Day around our closest dam, and then another was a pretty steep incline hike up to a rocky outcrop, which was stunning. Beautiful, beautiful views, and whilst I found it pretty hard going for the last couple of 100 meters or so, it was definitely worth doing. So they were really lovely. We also took a day out onto the other side of the city to the Kite Fest, and my daughter right now is very heavily engaged in collecting crystals and learning all she can about crystals. So completely on her own, she is now doing a bit of a geology deep dive for herself. Of course, she continued with her regular or her drama sessions that she has in the week, singing classes. She also completed her grade 6 Trinity College of London speech and drama exams and was awarded a merit for that. I'm so proud of her perseverance with all this. It's a lot of extra hours of practice and study and learning lines and learning all the theory components that she needs to for these exams. So she's completed grade 6, 2 more to go, and then she's basically finished the program. She may consider looking at the diplomas that they offer, but that's a little while away. She also entered into our local drama Eisteddfod and came away with a swag of medals. Given the last couple of years we've had, it was such a good experience for the kids to be able to get up on stage and actually perform in front of, albeit small, but in front of an audience. So that was really, really lovely for her to do as well. And my boy has continued enjoying his cadets program. He is learning so much there and loves going along to cadets. So a couple of fails for us this term. Like quite big fails really, actually. I haven't had that happen this year where we've had to actually ditch something, but that's okay. That's the beauty of homeschooling. We can just put something aside and find something else to fill that need. So a couple of fails, overall plenty of wins, another great term, and we're looking forward to the last term of the year. If you have any questions, don't forget, feel free to ask them down in the question box below. As always, thank you so much for being here. Till next time. Bye for now.